At Z1, we love the Nissan Frontier. It's Nissan's rugged, dependable little truck, and the D41 is no exception. The new D41 brings a new engine, new transmission, new body style, and a much better, more modern interior. It's got more comfortable seats, better ergonomics, big and now bigger touchscreen, 360 cameras, backup sensors, CarPlay, all the good stuff. However, with all that technology, why is this factory audio system so terrible? If Nissan gave us such a capable little truck, why does it not have an equally capable sound system? And with that, Z1 Audio was born. Today I'm going to take you behind the design. We're talking about the ideas that sparked Z1 Audio, the development that shaped the products, verification to prove them, and ultimately how we landed on a 3-tier audio package for the D41 Frontier and coming soon for other Nissan vehicles. For those of you that don't know, my name's Kyle. I've been a design engineer at Z1 for about 6.5 years now. In that time, I've worked on supercharger kits, intakes, exhausts, lots of stuff that you likely have on your vehicle already. At heart, I'm kind of an audio nerd into car audio, home audio, boat audio. So quite excited to show our first Z1 audio product, which is D41 sound system upgrades. To start the project, we needed to look at the baseline. The D41 Frontier comes with 2 possible audio packages. First is the base audio, which is much like what Nissan has done for the last 10 years. It consists of 2 mid-tweeters in the dash, 2 woofers in the front doors, and then 2 coaxial speakers in the rear doors. It's 4 channels, all powered by the stock head unit with no extra amplifier. There is an optional fender upgrade, which has a tweeter in the dash, a mid-tweeter in the dash, 6x9 woofer in the front doors, and then coaxial 6.5s in the rear doors. It also adds a 440 watt amplifier underneath the driver's seat and then a small little sub underneath the rear seat. So we know what we have to work with, and now let's look at how we're going to upgrade. So after looking at the layout of the factory trucks, we put microphones in the vehicles and recorded to figure out where the actual weaknesses are in systems and where we need to upgrade them. So we've used the RTA to look at the signal coming from the stock head unit to the fender amplifier, and we've looked at the channels coming out of the fender amplifier. What we found is the signal coming from the head unit is 4 channels of the amplifier. They're clean, no surprises there. It does limit the bass control at full volume, just you can't increase it any further as expected. The output to the rear speakers looks good. The output to the front speakers looks good, and it's crossing over between the door woofers and the dash at a reasonable frequency. So the fender amp should do fine controlling some aftermarket speakers, but we found the anomaly with the sub channel basically pulling away bass as volume increases. And what that means is we'll need to take the signal before it gets to the fender amp instead of using the output like where the factory sub is. That's easy enough with the right wiring. And also we're going to need to add an amplifier because this fender amp just does not have enough output for a real subwoofer. So we set out scanning, designing, and fitting for both base model audio and fender audio systems. Who do we use for our components, our drivers, amplifiers? We started by ordering a handful of different companies and speaker options. And testing, I literally built test speakers in my garage, set up a test studio here to compare them, and then we took the best ones and tried to fit them in Nissan vehicles. Ultimately, we landed on audio control. Their audio control has been the name of the game for about 35 years for their audio processing and factory integration, and they recently came out with their P&W line speakers, altitude amplifiers, and their own subwoofers. They're very high quality components. They offer great fitment, and I think you guys will really appreciate them. Now that we've selected audio control, let's run through each product offering real quick to give you a little bit more about the design of these items. The first thing everybody asks about is bass. So let's just start there. If you have the base model or the base audio, you have no subwoofer. You don't have bass. We'll just skip that one. If you have the Fender setup, you have 1 channel of this amp, actually 2 channels of this amp, powering this sub under the seat. It's not supposed to come apart. So we've got 2 little 5-inch paper drivers here, powered by the Fender amplifier. What happens as you turn up the volume is it actually, to stop blowing, or to prevent blowing those little subs, as you increase the volume, it actually pulls back the bass output. It's not even trying to output more bass as you increase the volume. So you've got some bass output down low, but up top you don't. And it's it's not your ears going crazy, it's just not trying. This amp lives under the seat, in the driver's seat, on a little, or actually a big bracket. We're using the same location to mount our amplifier, the monoblock or the 5-channel. So we've got a custom bracket that goes here that you can also mount the factory Fender amp on as well, if you have the Fender audio. If you don't have the Fender audio, you don't need this bracket because you won't have this. Obviously in the D41 interior, there's not a whole lot of room for a subwoofer, especially when you get to drivers that are larger than the factory 5-inch drivers. The obvious choice is underneath the passengers, or underneath the rear seat on the passenger side. It's actually deeper there so you can fit a larger driver. So we 3D scanned underneath the seat up, seat down, mounting locations, and got to town modeling. The first iteration was actually kind of funny. Our truck has rubber floor mats. It seems like they all do, maybe not, but they have a lip that sticks up in the back, right against the subwoofer enclosure. So we 3D printed the subwoofer enclosure, half expecting it to blow apart. You know, it took 30 hours and 10 pounds of plastic. But what happened is we assembled it, put it in, and the air was venting out the front of the enclosure, causing the floor mats to rattle. So chucked that design, 3D printed a new one, and I think chucked that one, 3D printed a new one, and ultimately landed on this enclosure here. It's a little heavy. So this puts a 10-inch driver underneath the passenger side of the rear seat. It's very easy to install. It just drops in rubber grommets underneath the seat, and then when the seat's down, it latches down, it holds this in place, so it can't go sliding around on you. You also get a freebie MOLLE panel on the side that has a couple inches to the door, so you can use MOLLE nuts, bolt what you want there, try to avoid anything rattly. But when the seat's down, this is out of the way. The corners cut away, so when you swing your feet in, if you have big shoes, your feet don't get stuck between the door. That was a change made a couple times to make sure it's out of the way when you swing your foot in. Yeah, it lives out of the way. The sub inside here is the audio control Space 10S2. So it's 10-inch, slim driver, 2 ohms, and it gets 600 watts from whichever amplifier you choose. Another fun tidbit, we are taking the signal before the factory Fender amplifier. So even though this amplifier wants to taper the bass off, we're not letting it. So as you increase the volume, bass keeps going up. Now we have to look at the mids and highs, which means a speaker upgrade. So bass audio has a mid tweeter in the dash and a woofer in the door, driven off the same channel. Fender audio has a tweeter in the dash, mid in the dash, a mid tweeter in the dash, and woofer in the door. We go with that 3-way setup, they call it. So we got the 6x9 in the door, 2.75 in the dash, and then 1-inch tweeter in the dash, as well as the hardware to make the tweeter mount in the factory location, whether you have the factory tweeter or not. So it's stealthy. You can't see it at all. This is all crossed over by our custom Z1 Audio second order Linkwitz-Riley crossovers. What I mean by that is higher frequencies are more directional. Lower frequencies are omnidirectional. They travel kind of just anywhere. So your low frequencies, your more bassy notes, you play through the woofer, which they're mounted low in the door. The higher frequencies come out of the tweeter and the 2.75, the mid tweeter, which you want up in the dash. If you have a lot of component setups run just a tweeter and a woofer, which means a lot of the mid frequencies are actually coming out in the door. And what that means is you have a deep voice coming out in the door, or deeper instruments coming out in the door, where you really want it all in front of you. So one nice thing about having the 2.75 in the tweeter is what you hear comes out in front of you, and the lower notes, more of what you feel, comes out the sides. It's very nice. If you've listened to a component setup that doesn't have the mid, this is much improved. So that's how that works. This is a very good setup here, and thankfully the D41 is one of the few Nissan vehicles that has a 3-way setup, so why not utilize it? So there's that. Moving to the rear, the D41 is kind of an oddball because they run what's called coaxial speakers in the rear doors. That's a tweeter in line with the woofer, all in one. Typically, that's what they do on the base model vehicles, but Nissan tends to run a component setup which moves the tweeter separate and higher up, so you hear it better, on the upgrade, like the Rockford Fosgates. To kind of keep the trend going, we offer a coaxial upgrade for the rear speakers, which they come assembled in the bracket. This is heavy. So you just unbolt the rear speakers, bolt this right in, you're good to go. Or you can do the upgrade to the component set, which uses our crossover and the audio control tweeter, put a hole in the door card, and then you get a much improved soundstage. It is noticeable. I recommend doing it, but if you want to be completely stealthy, go coaxial. Either way, these install And aside from that tweeter, if you decide to put it in, you can't tell. And again, there's no cutting, nothing. Crossovers plug right in. There's a little bit of sheet metal needs bent for these fat magnets on the front speakers, but there's no cutting. It's just a little bit of a bend with pliers. Okay, so that outlines the speaker upgrade. Keep in mind, the speaker upgrade is just that. It uses the factory amplification, whether that's your Fender amplifier or your factory head unit. The audio control speakers are 2.3 to 2.4 ohms, unlike 4 ohms like most aftermarket speakers, which means they do run more efficiently with the little output from the factory system, but there's a lot on the table with these speakers. And that brings us to the hi-fi package. The hi-fi package upgrades you to the, I need to work out, the A1105 5-channel amp. This is 600 watts for the sub and 125 watts for the other 4 channels, each corner of the car. Basically, we're hijacking all of the audio, the whole audio signal. Instead of running it to the Fender amp or out from the head unit to the speakers, we're running it to the audio control amplifier, and that is powering the speakers directly. Again, it just bolts under the seat. It's plug and play, easy still, and we include instructions on how to set the tuning. So you don't have to take it to a shop and have them set the tuning. We can get you really close. You make some little tweaks the way you like it. All right, that wraps up the D41 audio packages. I hope that gives you some insight on our decision-making and design process of these components. Be sure to leave us a comment on what you want to see next. I promise there's more chassis coming very soon. Thanks.